Hi, it's me, Megan Bob. Yes, I do sound a little bit sickly right now, but I just had to record something to explain this because this episode, well, it just sort of showed up in the feed. I don't really understand it, but I thought, what the hell, I'm going to release it anyway. I did listen to part of it just to make sure that it's suitably filthy, and yeah, it checks out. It is the real McCoy, which is fitting because it's a Star Trek episode. I know, I'm hilarious. Oh, good stuff. Also, I have to let you know that this episode does contain spoilers for all of Star Trek's Mirror Universe episodes, and most especially for Season 1 of Star Trek Discovery. I know, one of the new Treks. All right, that's it. I just want to let you know that, and I hope you enjoy the episode. Bye!
Welcome, subjects of the Empire, to Hard Choices, the podcast where we plant our glorious freak flag on the soil of fictional universe after fictional universe, crushing their inhabitants beneath the high-heeled boot of our sexual judgment. Needless to say, every conquest is an exquisite pleasure, but even so, this episode is a special one. First of all, we'll be meting out the harsh judgment of our boners upon the denizens of Star Trek's Mirror Universe, a group of treacherous bastards with a special place in our own cold hearts. Even more importantly, according to censors, our RSS feed is passing through an ion storm that will result in this episode dropping in a parallel reality, the one scientists call the Prime, or Limp Dick universe. So for those of you joining us from the Limp Dick timeline, a word of explanation. In your world, this feed is home to a gentler, feebler podcast called Hard Choices. The host, Megan Bob, releases episodes, perhaps monthly, with no military discipline, about the fuckability of such insipid ensembles as The Muppets, The Justice League, or what are they doing this month? The Prime Universe. Garfield? And Friends? Jesus. In 2021, in an episode about the Star Trek franchise, my Limp Dick timeline counterpart first appeared on that program and acquiesced to Megan Bob's whims, such as excluding Chakotay from consideration in favor of Q, merely because Q is interesting to talk about and Chakotay objectively is not. In our universe, the Star Trek episode unfolded differently. Sensing weakness, I wrested control of the podcast from Megan Bob with the help of various allies, such as Miles Schneiderman with an eye patch, and Andy Creighton with a sexy little knife. Since then, I have captained the newly militarized Hard Choices podcast with the firm hand that she requires, claiming one fictional character from each universe as the captain's woman, or man, or non-binary sex pet, and relegating all lesser characters to the Agony booth, there to face punishment for their meager fuckiness. Tonight will be no different, as we identify the median, the zenith, and the nadir of Mirror Universe fuckability. But, like the Hard Choices hosts of the Limp Dick timeline, we are hedonists at heart, and it isn't really about who wins and who loses. It's about all the free goatee rides we enjoyed along the way. I'm kidding, of course. In this dark universe, there is no such thing as a free goatee ride. I'm Captain Kris Newton, commanding officer of the RSS Hard Choices. Joining me today to bring the denizens of the Mirror Universe to their literal and figurative knees are Agonizer test subject Dan Mulkerin.
Oh no, don't throw me in the Agonizer.
In an Imperial issue crop top, Admiral James D'Amato.
Hello, villains. We're here on a big spaceship, but there's only one Jeffries tube.
And in thigh-high boots, Madame Sharon Schneiderman.
Unless you've got something bigger in your torpedo tube, I'm not changing my rankings.
Now, it's time to loosen our sashes, set our agonizers to edge, and have our way with the best and worst that the Mirror Universe has to offer. First, though, I must remind you all of our mandate. Remember, the Terran Imperial Code demands that we judge these characters based not on how hot they look or how mercilessly they kill, but on their fuckability. Presume that you cannot or will not kill them, and they cannot or will not kill you. How is the sex, and does it fulfill your cartoonishly evil desires? And now, loyal subjects of the Terran Empire, honorable mentions.
Lieutenant Nyota Uhura, communications officer aboard the ISS Enterprise. Her costume is iconic, but she's not the one who wears it on screen. That's her Starfleet counterpart, who's from the namby-pamby Prime universe, though you wouldn't know it from the way she handles a knife. Mirror Uhura sadly doesn't speak on screen, either with words or via knife play, so she didn't make our list.
A personal affront and insult to me personally, Captain Michael Burnham, daughter of the Empress and commanding officer of the ISS Shenzhou. While no doubt a ruthless and prolific murderer, which we love to see, Burnham couldn't match up to the numerous breakout Mirror Universe characters from Discovery, and was therefore cut from our list. No offense to the Butcher of the Binary Stars, she just isn't quite in her mom's league when it comes to over-the-top evil. Maybe if she improves her shout-to-whisper ratio and gets a sword, we'll consider her in the future.
And finally, Quark, a barkeep on the space station Terok Nor, who secretly aided Terran captives in escaping the Klingon-Cardassian alliance. Unlike most Mirror Universe characters, he's more courageous and moral than his Prime Universe counterpart. But Quark is long overdue to appear on Hard Choices, having been omitted from the fateful 90s Star Trek episode, along with only a handful of other series regulars. Someday, maybe we'll find out what the Mirror Universe equivalent of Umox is. Some kind of ear and ball torture, maybe. But today we have bigger and less rodent-like fish to fry. With a final salute to these honorable mentions as we beam them into space for their failure, we turn now to the list. Number 1, Empress Hoshi Sato, a genius polyglot who used sex and treachery to become Empress of the Terran Empire itself. By the way, a big personal fuck you to everybody who overused the cunning linguist joke. We needed it for this moment.
Number 2, Commander Jonathan Archer, an underachieving first officer of the ISS Enterprise. He rose to the brink of absolute power by seizing command of the futuristic USS Defiant. He then immediately fell from power by being Jonathan Archer.
Number 3, Dr. Phlox, Chief Medical Officer aboard the ISS Enterprise. He's mainly just an evil doctor stereotype. However, he was co-creator of the Agony booth, an iconic element of the Mirror Universe, so he'd have to be way more boring for us to leave him off the list. By the way, honorable mention to Malcolm Reed.
Number 4, High Chancellor Spock, first officer of the ISS Enterprise and facial hair trendsetter for evil twins everywhere.
Number 5, Lieutenant Hikaru Sulu, who's responsible for security aboard the ISS Enterprise. Well, he's in charge of jumping his superior officers in hallways. It's like mirror security.
Number 6, Lieutenant Marlena Moreau, who serves aboard the ISS Enterprise as the captain's consort and, more formally, as a science officer. You know, like Spock in the Prime Universe.
Number 7, Regent Wolf. Ooh, Wolf? Never mind.
Wolf. He wishes.
Right? Number 7, Regent Worf, the fearsome but hapless Klingon regent of the Klingon-Cardassian alliance. If you're hot for Worf, but wish he weren't so dumb and honorable, have I got half a piece of good news for you.
Number 8, Intendant Kira Nerys, overseer of the Alliance space station Terok Nor, and arguably the horniest major character in the Star Trek franchise. Say what you will about Kirk and Riker, but they never tried to fuck themselves. And not for lack of opportunity.
Number 9, Gul Elam Garrick, Intendant Kira's second-in-command on Terok Nor. Plain, simple Garrick not enough for you? Try new extra Garrick.
Ask your doctor first. Number 10, Benjamin Sisko, leader of the Terran Resistance, originally a sex toy of Intendant Kira. Sisko was later demoted to Champion of Humanity.
Number 11, Miles O'Brien, a.k.a. Smiley, who escaped slavery on Terek Nor to become a resistance fighter against the Klingon-Cardassian alliance. You may think that his years of servitude explain why he looks like Harpo Marx after working a double shift at the cannery, but Prime Universe, same deal.
Number 12, Admiral Catherine Janeway of the New Terran Armada. We don't know much about her, except that she's got command of the ISS Voyager, but it's a safe bet that she's as evil as hell. Prime Janeway straight up executed Tuvix, and she's the good twin.
Number 13, Emperor Philippa Georgiou, a complex woman whose qualities I will delicately express as a compliment sandwich. Emperor of the Terran Empire, sword-wielding cannibal, devoted mother. She did kill her daughter, though. Sorry, the bread's kind of soggy.
Number 14, Captain Gabriel Lorca, commanding officer of the ISS Buran. After forming an alliance with Michael Burnham and failing in a coup attempt against Emperor Georgiou, he fled to the Prime Universe, where he formed an alliance with another Michael Burnham and failed in another coup attempt against Emperor Georgiou.
Well inflected. Hail the Emperor.
Number 15, Captain Sylvia Tilly, a.k.a. Captain Killy, commanding officer of the ISS Discovery. Production trivia, the character is a mass murderer because someone thought that referring to Tilly as Killy was a good joke.
There they are. 15 of the worst timeline's finest. Now, to the best part of fucking. Interrogation and judgment. As captain of this vessel, I'll begin. My number 8 is Captain Benjamin Sisko. It's the destiny of every great Mirror Universe hero to slay their oppressor with a cool new weapon, achieve martial supremacy, and perpetuate the glorious cycle of violence. It's a pretty sad day when your moralizing Prime Universe counterpart has to do the job for you, but that's what happened to Ben Sisko, because he couldn't hack it. He fucked Intendant Kira for years while she brutally oppressed his people, but he didn't murder her once. That's fear of commitment. But we're not here to judge Sisko's character, we're here to judge his fuckability, and the fact that a sex monster like Kira kept Sisko around for so long speaks well of him. Like any longtime captain's pet, he's no doubt got the skills and charisma to show me a good time, but Sisko is a broken man, and a broken man cannot deeply fuck. That's why you have to keep breaking new ones. Admiral, you're number 8.
My number 8 is Miles O'Brien, or Smiley to his, I suppose, friends. You can say what you want about this guy, but he's got a modicum of spine. It's not much, but there's enough there that you can hone him into all sorts of things if you put in the effort. He's prime for evadering. As we all know, in the Mirror Universe, sex moves that you can look up on Urban Dictionary are pretty much the only way people have sex, and evadering is where you break someone into being the worst version of themselves and then get off on how much they resent what they've become.
Dan, you're number 8.
My number 8 is Kira Nerys. This is one where the allure is significantly higher than the actual payoff. Like, just watching the way she sways her hips when she walks was enough to make me seriously consider her for the number 1 spot. But then I thought about the actual sexual encounter itself. And yes, she's clearly a hedonist, interested in and experienced in sexual pleasure, but she's also a spoiled brat. And not in the brat play sense, where it's a persona that you are knowingly adopting. She's just like a selfish, entitled person. If you're into being on the receiving end of pet play and you can manage to remain on her good side, I think she's going to show you a good time. But she's not going to go out of her way to make sure you enjoy yourself beyond what is baseline necessary.
Damn. Spoken like a man who wants to get thrown into the agonizer. Sharon, you're number 8.
My number 8 is Mirror Worf. Worf has so much passion and so much depth, but this Worf is not going to be able to find any of the parts that it matters to find, and he cannot follow through.
Klingons famously believe the penis is a myth.
It's like, whoa.
Dan, you're number 9.
So my number 9 is Worf, which is to say, a version of Worf without the inner conflict. You know, a fairly typical Klingon warrior type, which, you know, I mean, it's gonna be good, but kind of like low-key, I'm gonna be thinking about Prime Worf and his quiet angst the whole time. You know, it's like when I listen to any type of music that is not heavy metal. You know, it's like, I can acknowledge the quality on an objective level, but like, where's the guitar solos, you know? Like, where's the distortion? And I do realize how ironic a comparison this is, given that Mirror Worf is much more heavy metal coded than Prime Worf. But, you know, this is the Mirror universe, so a certain degree of like topsy-turviness is to be expected with these rankings.
Mm-hmm. Nice thing about this universe, a metaphor can't be wrong. It's just, you know,
exactly.
Every analogy is good. James, you're number 9.
My number 9 is Phlox. Now, the best move for this guy is the Perilous, and that's where you terrify him into making a devious machine and then use it against him.
My number 9 is Gul Elim Garak. Prime Universe Elim Garak is one of the sexiest characters ever to appear on Star Trek because he is a charming man of subtlety and secrets. Mirror Universe Garak, in contrast, is an evil man in an evil uniform. Andy, you're not going to hear me say a lot of bad things about evil uniforms in this episode, but for Garak, the evil uniform is a step down. It's too on the nose. I worried that he would just start pumping away, blunt as a truncheon, without the repartee that I want from Garak. Without Prime Garak's subtlety, without his layers, without the delicious, delicate coating of pretense around his ruthless core, Mirror Garak is sexy in a cruder way. He is not a croquembouche, but a mere ramekin of cream filling. Naturally, I would eat it, but I would kill the chef. Sharon, you're number 9.
My number 9 is Tilly. I cannot find her very interesting. She's lovely. She seems like she would kind of know what she was doing, but does she really? Has she ever touched herself? I'm not sure.
I think that's the one thing that separates her from the Prime Universe.
Ooh, she might have only touched herself.
You just rub one out and you don't need to commit as many murders. It's sad, but true.
You think the Prime Universe one is just 2 slick fingers at all times?
That's the only reason so many people around her are still alive.
Dan, you're number 10.
So my number 10 is Spock. This is, you know, one standard unit of Spock. Regardless of the universe, it's pretty much the same. So that means this sex is going to be more objective-based than anything. Like, you will certainly achieve whatever measure of physical satisfaction is necessary to fit Starfleet's definition of an orgasm, which Spock could no doubt quote verbatim. But if you want anything that's like passionate or wild, you know, you got to like get your hand on some weird alien spores or you know, a Kirk mask. That would probably do it too.
I did check. I'm sure others had the same thought. I'm sad to report there is no page for Orgasm on Memory Alpha.
No.
Truly.
Sorely missing.
Admiral, you're number 10.
My number 10 is going to be Garak. The thing about racists is they're obsessed with being dominated, and breaking this man and making him succumb to all of his darkest fears, teaching him his own fragility stroke by stroke, it has its appeal, but ultimately that's for him, not me.
My number 10 is Captain Sylvia Tilly. Have you ever met someone whose work is their life, but they're bad at it? Despite loving murder so much that she traded her real name for a dumb pun, Killy has earned only the paltry 50 kills medal awarded by the Terran Empire, not the 100 kills medal that we see on other characters. So if she's as thirsty as she is bloodthirsty, how many times is she really going to make me come? 50 to 99? I guess I've never jerked off onto a shiny breastplate before. So I'd give Killy a go once or twice, but she's never going to be highly decorated.
Gives a new meaning to the money shot.
Yes. Sharon, you're number 10.
My number 10 is Miles O'Brien, aka Smiley. God, this man is so broken, and not in the good way. He is broken in the sad, has no will to live, depressing way. And something I don't need in my sex life is to cuddle someone as they cry post-sex.
You at least want to be the one who made them cry in that case, right?
Right?
Like, if they come pre-broken, what's even the point?
It's just lazy craftsmanship if you let someone pre-break them.
I don't want your sloppy seconds.
Dan, you're number 11.
So my number 11 is Gabriel Lorca. And this is where my commitment to objectivity really gets tested. This guy absolutely sucks. Like, everything from grooming a much younger woman to name-dropping Elon Musk in a list of history's greatest scientific minds. There is no universe in which any version of myself would say yes to a hookup with this guy. But the premise of the show is what it is. And so, given that I go to bed with him, it pains me to say this, like a trip to my beloved agonizer, but I don't think it's impossible that he knows what he's doing. He's determined, he's smart, and he manipulates people in many ways, including through sex. And it's not just sex that he manipulates people, but I don't think his plan to recruit people into his elaborate interstellar coup d'etat conspiracy would work all that well if step one of his plan was give mediocre head.
Admiral, you're number 11.
My number 11 is also Gabriel Lorca. He's mostly an inoffensive victim. He already knows how powerless he is, so there isn't much fun that you can have with him that you can't have with someone else.
My number 11 is Commander Jonathan Archer. Yes, I would consider putting my dick in the human embodiment of insecurity, but I have an important question for you. Is his haircut bad? Oh. Oh, I see. Bring him to me.
I'm sorry, that haircut?
Oh, it's terrible.
Sharon, you're number 11.
My number 11 is Benjamin Sisko. That man smells of a 3-day-old hangover, and I cannot imagine him respecting or even having any pleasure in pleasuring someone else. He seems solely fixed on his own gains, and while that can be okay some of the time, I don't want to be a part of that.
Dan, you're number 12.
My number 12 is Garrick. I feel like he's middling at best under any circumstance, unless you, as Worf did, put him in a collar, force him to his knees, and get him to draw upon his grumpily submissive inner Starscream. Like, a would-be tin pot dictator forced into being a groveling sex toady. Delicious.
He's also my number 12. I don't need to be subjected to his obsequious and smarmy comments 1 minute and arrogant judgment the next.
But the collar, Sharon, the collar.
The collar, it was doing it for me a little bit, but
I mean, that credit goes to Worf. That's his handiwork.
that's why he's ranked higher.
Admiral, you're number 12.
My number 12 is Philippa Georgiou. She fumbles the bag. It's a no. This is someone who's too fragile to take you beyond your limits because she's gonna flinch at the last minute.
Well observed, I think. I mean, arguably treason, but she's lower on my list. So let's set some precedent and say that's well observed, Admiral.
I mean, it was treason before she ran away.
Oh, that's very true. That's a really good one, Admiral. Let's see. My number 12 is Regent Worf. Worf is almost as much of a doofus as Jonathan Archer, but he's less fun because he's overconfident rather than insecure. I have only so much time in my busy schedule to make blustering men come all over themselves and feel bad. Why would I waste my time with a Klingon who's got fully redundant shame receptors and takes at least twice as long to humiliate as a human? And I'm certainly not going to let him be on top and bellow at me all night long. I can maybe get into being spit on, but not accidentally and not by Worf. Dan, you're number 13.
So my number 13 is Phlox. I can definitely imagine this dude fucking. Like, it's very clear he does when Mir Soval dangles the possibility of concubines before him. But there is zero chance that it is not the most twisted, sadistic shit you can possibly imagine. Like, he gets off on pain and suffering, even in a non-sexual context. And, you know me, I'm always down to take a little trip in the agonizer. Even I would need some DBZ hyperbolic time chamber training to get to the point where what this guy is into seems even remotely appealing.
Admiral, you're number 13.
My number 13 is Marlena Moreau. This is just a normal woman. Nothing to say, nothing to add. Just facts is facts.
The Admiral's famous catchphrase says this at almost every restaurant he goes to.
Yeah.
Send this back. Just a normal woman.
A normal woman.
Oh, that's his catchphrase. I thought it was facts is facts. I was trying to think of like a fakey Latin version of it that we could put on as standard or something. Veritas et veritum or something. I don't know.
My number 13 is Smiley. Now, he may not look like much, but maybe you can connect with this beaten down shell of a handyman. Maybe you can inspire him, overwhelm him with force of personality, tell him exactly what to do, somehow convince him to dourly, painfully try to give you sexual pleasure. If you can do that, then Miles O'Brien will kidnap Ben Sisko and convince him to fuck you right. Maybe. Sharon, you're number 13.
My number 13 is Sulu. I do not need to have a sweaty man pin me up against a wall. And if I wanted that, I'd go to any bar. Why is he so sweaty all the time?
It's part of the mystique, Sharon. It's a conversation starter.
Yeah.
All Terran starships have their temperature set to 85 degrees.
I get that. But he's still stickier than
He just needs to take the midriff
else.
out of his top. That's all it is, you know?
Oh, maybe that would help him.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we have crop tops. It's crazy not to wear them.
Dan, you're number 14.
My number 14 is Smiley. And Kris, I have already contracted the assassins that will be heading towards you because you stole my exact joke. Yeah, sex with Smiley is actually sex with Prime Sisko because he would immediately realize that he's out of his depth. And sex with Prime Sisko is going to be good. I don't think it counts as good sex with Smiley.
Yes, a question for the philosophers. Mm-hmm. Admiral, you're number 14.
My number 14, there was a bit of an error. The list that I was working off of had me rating Quark. But I suppose I can just swap in Killy and we'll just keep the rating the same because in this universe I don't care about diligence or formats. Killy's kind of a one-trick pony. It could be pretty satisfying to destroy her life, but that's it.
No, that works. My number 14 is Dr. Phlox. Sometimes you see porn that is so unappealing that it's not like it's just bad porn. It's not for you. You're not going to enjoy it. You were never going to enjoy it. And odds are that if you met someone who was heavily into it, you wouldn't enjoy them either. That's how I feel about vivisection. Now, I know every evil doctor has to perform vivisections from time to time, but you don't have to whistle while you do it. You're not obliged to get off on slicing open some scaly little creature any more than you have to get hard for cleaning your hypospray or repairing a crew member's rib after an evil rock climbing accident. Phlox is the kind of guy who gets a buzz from opening up a hapless quadruped with a scalpel. That's not my kink. I don't understand it. And I don't think we'd have a great time together. Also, I just have to point out he does dress like Donald Pleasance from Puma Man. That is also a mark against him.
That's a mark against him?
Yes, it is.
Have you no heart? This is truly the mirror universe.
I just want to remind all men in the Terran Empire that after 50 years old, you should get vivisected every appointment with the doctor.
Sharon, you're number 14.
Phlox is also my number 14. I don't need to get sticky and have sex inside of a vivisected creature. Thank you very much. Also, is he going to try to make some new holes to fill? I'm good without being experimented on.
Sharon, I feel like a lot of your takes this episode are very moisture-centric.
Sticky.
Yeah.
No one's mentioned this yet, but a phlox sounds like a Dr. Seuss thing.
It does.
True. And he's got that tongue.
It would have little tufts of hair. And
there's a lot of tufts involved. It's like fucking a Muppet, which in this universe is unappealing.
That is unappealing.
I don't know why I keep saying in this universe. It's the one that people would reference.
Dan, you're number 15.
So my number 15 is Jonathan Archer. This avatar of fragile masculinity needs to straight up engineer a mutiny in order to have any pull. His idea of kissing Sato looks like he's tripping and falling into her face. His idea of sex is to demand loudly for you to blow him. Then afterwards, he takes you in missionary while gritting his teeth, trying to hold back tears as he repeats his mantra about how he can still totally pass for 30 and how he doesn't actually look like a slightly mummified Ben Stiller.
Admiral, you're number 15.
My number 15 is Spock. This is a logic-driven being who's ultimately so boring that it hardly makes him worth talking about. Probably one of the few mirrors who fucks worse than Prime. And it comes down to there's no pathos there. There's no shame or conflict. He's in a universe that simply embraces worse traits. He doesn't trend towards nobility, so when it's presented, he simply selects it because he's choosing it as the logically superior choice. There's less than Prime Spock. Be gone.
My number 15 is Philippa Georgiou. Forgive me for speaking ill of a former emperor. I will endeavor to respect the office. But Philippa Georgiou is a poser. Is she evil? Certainly. Her credentials on paper are impeccable. Genocide, cannibalism, torture of her immediate family. But she's so insufferable that it's hard to enjoy the evil. You know, you can commit an evil deed in silence. Were you aware of that? And if you want style points, you can cackle, you can brag. But to unironically refer to your own, quote, nastiness and inherently bad behavior, to refer to yourself as, quote, extremely wicked, to make every conversation labor under your performative rudeness and immorality, and even worse, to sell out your principles by giving up cannibalism, using time travel to unkill your daughter, and thinking that this nonsensical redemption makes you a badass antihero. Georgiou may think she's being edgy by flirting with good like this, but she clearly doesn't even understand the perverse Prime Universe morality that she's aping. She's a poser, she's a loser, and I'm glad her spin-off series got downgraded to one horrible movie. And yet, long live the Emperor. Sharon, you're number 15.
My number 15 is Jonathan Archer. That man is so boring and lacking confidence that I would have to reassure him the entire time. Oh no, you're doing great. When really it was like fucking a virgin in the back of a car in high school. I just don't need to have that experience. I don't need to try to convince him that he's good enough. He's not.
There was a shaking of the head there that I think was just very important to the sentiment. I just want to put that out there for the listener. Yeah. Very judgmental. I loved it. All right. Well, that was exhausting, but we must persevere. Even emperors fuck their way up from the bottom, and we're halfway there. let's leave the lower decks and begin our ascent to the captain's quarters and ultimately the captain's chair with number 7. Dan, your number 7.
So my number 7 is Sylvia Tilly, a.k.a. the ultimate switch. She effortlessly alternates between being sweet and obedient and being fiery and commanding. She is the perfect sub for someone who can dominate her, and she is a terrifying dom to anyone else. Now, you would think this would put her much nearer to the top, and an earlier version of this list did have her as high as number 4, but there's something missing behind her eyes. I struggle to imagine any kind of like meaningful connection with her. Like, I think you'd have an incredible time with her physically, but anything beyond that, I think it leaves her at this side of the list, just above the median for me.
Admiral, your number 7.
My number 7 is Worf. Look, he's got style, ambition, intensity, and he did that fun little thing with the collar. The real tragedy with Worf, though, is that we all know he fucks really well, but inevitably someone will come along and outfuck him to establish how much they fuck.
It's like the fucking Highlander.
Yes, exactly.
My number 7 is Gabriel Lorca. I'm going to be honest with you, I just like his face, but allow me to rationalize. He has more depth than Georgiou. He's a little charming. He's a little romantic. I think he knows a little of what it is to be in love. Of course, it's important to have a partner who's a bad person. But just as importantly, they've got to bring something to sex that touches you as a person. They have to be bad for you. With his combination of charm, earnest sentiment, duplicitousness, and ruthlessness, I think Lorca would be very, very bad for me. Sharon, you're number 7.
My number 7 is Intendant Kira Nerys. She's confident, sexy, and knows what she wants, and she wants it a lot. I would happily spend some time with her. Now, she seems to be a little confused about how to properly run a government and command everybody, so she's not higher, but I think it would be a good time.
Interesting. Dan, you're number 6.
So my number 6 is Hikaru Sulu. Just look at the way he fucking drapes himself over the console when he's trying to seduce Uhura. Like, obviously the dude is kind of a sex pest who doesn't like being told no, so, you know, he'd be a nightmare to be around if you're not into him. But guess what this show is? We are into him, and I do think he could show you a good time. Like, he's one of the most purely athletic members of any Enterprise, regardless of what universe you're in, and that gleam in his eyes, whether he's sweet-talking Uhura or he's threatening Kirk with a knife, he enjoys flaunting his dominance and showing what he can do. And I want to see what he can do. I think it's going to be good.
Admiral, you're number 6.
My number 6 is a bit controversial. It's Jonathan Archer. I think some of his potential is being overlooked because this is a guy that you can edge body and soul. Now, the ideal situation is a move that I call the Q-tip Sisyphus. That's trapping him in an endless game where he has to struggle and sacrifice to climb to the top, only to push him back down just before he gets anything he wants.
I think that was the original name of American Gladiators, was Q-tip Sisyphus.
Q-tip Sisyphus, yes.
My number 6 is Spock. I don't think you can get a better cold chess master fuck than from a human Vulcan hybrid. Spock has a much keener understanding of human impulses and conventions than other Vulcans do. Presumably this is even more true of Mirror Spock, because he rose to power in a world dominated by humans. But Mirror Spock is still coldly logical himself. He knows how to push buttons and manipulate behavior to get what he wants without catching feelings himself until the dam breaks. So you have another speed after the chess master fuck. Then we get the flip the board, flip the table fuck. Is he moralistic? Is he a weakling at his core? Maybe. After all, his high-minded reforms did result in the fall of the Empire, but that means that this paragon of cold, ruthless efficiency ultimately lost an empire because his feelings got in the way. Maybe I can't respect a breakdown like that, but the chance to cause one is very appealing. Sharon, you're number 6.
My number 6 is also Spock. I think every version of myself finds Spock highly attractive. Give me some logical intuition and think about how to get what you want and how to give what other people want. You are so calculating and amazing. Also, he's smart enough to know that being the captain of the ship is not the safest place. Not that he can't fight to be up there, but he knows that being that second in command is okay. And really, who controls the ship after all anyway? I think that he would be able to tell you what to do and know how to convince you to do it. And you would enjoy every minute.
Make you think it's all your idea.
Dan, you're number 5.
So my number 5 is Benjamin Sisko. I'll admit his attitude throws me off a little bit. He's a little too much like Joker from Batman to be fully appealing to me. However, he has left a trail of very hot lovers in his wake, and while all of them hate him, it's the type of hate that comes from him being a shit and a heartbreaker and not from him being a bad lover. In fact, I think it's quite the opposite. Like, I think you only get that salty about the end of a relationship if you were getting something really good out of it. And my read is that any of his past lovers would more than willingly jump back into bed with this guy given half a chance.
Admiral, you're number 5.
My number 5 is Catherine Janeway. She's competent, powerful, and enhanced. She's someone who's hard to seduce, probably, and she'll only release herself in specific moments, but she has some demons to fuck through.
My number 5 is Marlena Moreau, the original captain's woman, and very nearly the best. Moreau is a master of playing the game of sex with an eye on the whole board. Look at her with Kirk. See how she's using her sexuality not bluntly or exclusively, but alongside all her other emotional and political options. You can only have your brains fucked out so often and for so long before you become numb. But a person who knows when to pull back. Not just to be sexually available, but to be sexually unavailable, or available when it's inconvenient, or demanding and then submissive and then demanding until you shatter like glass. That kind of sex is not only delicious and evil, but sustainable. I can see myself in a long, fucked up relationship with Marlena Moreau. Sharon, you're number 5.
My number 5 is also Marlena Moreau.
Wow. Evil high five.
Last 2. The idea that she is so good at pleasing someone as volatile as Captain Kirk and has him coming back for more. She knows what she's doing. And she would make you feel like you are in control of every situation. She'd make you feel like you are the best.
Dan, you're number 4.
So my number 4 is Filippo Giorgio. For me personally, Giorgio feels a bit too comfortable with herself. Now, normally I find confidence very sexy. In her case, it makes her feel kind of cold. Like, even if she's into you, she's not going to feel like she needs you. And this part is a little difficult for me to put my finger on, but like, there's not a lot of drive and desperation to her. I think she's happy with herself and where she is in life. And, you know, that's great for her. But when it comes to fuckability, I think having something to like work toward means a lot. But all of that is only to explain why she's not higher on my list, because her physicality is undeniable. It's clear that she values her pleasure. And when it comes to sex, she's experienced, she's skilled, and she's knowledgeable enough to take 2 Orion sex workers to bed at the same time. And all they can talk about afterwards is how many new things they have learned from her. Like, she really makes my terra firma.
Gross.
Admiral, you're number 4.
My number 4 is Kira Nerys. She's not bad. She knows how to abuse her position. Ultimately, though, I think she fails up. She didn't build any of what she has. She just took it because it was convenient. There's no artistry in that. Everything's prepared for her.
My number 4 is another Admiral, Admiral Catherine Janeway. Janeway is one of the characters on this list who gives us the least to go on. However, she seems to have a lot in common with Prime Universe Janeway, who is very near the top of my 90s Trek list. She has the same swagger, the same boldness and pragmatism, but without that streak of scrupulousness that gets in the way. She's got Borg implants, but is not a Borg, which means she's a fighter, which I like. Most importantly, though, she didn't just carry on with the traditions of a brutal imperial society. She was born into a world where humans were enslaved. Only about 9 years after they revolted and won their freedom, Janeway has already assembled an armada and started rebuilding a Terran empire that didn't exist a decade ago. That's the kind of evil leadership I'm looking for in the bedroom. Janeway is, unlike any other character on this list, not a product of our circumstances here in this universe. Janeway did it herself. That's incredible. Sharon, you're number 4.
My number 4 is Gabriel Lorca. He's an enigma and a mystery, and he makes me want to please him, and he'd keep me guessing. Command me, Daddy. I get his character's awful, but oh.
Oh, I get you. Dan, you're number 3.
So my number 3 is Marlena Moreau. She says she'll fuck her way through the entirety of Imperial Starfleet if she has to. And you know what? I believe her. I mean, I might just get myself a commission in Starfleet just to like put myself in her crosshairs, you know? I've grown a goatee before. I can do it again.
Just a normal woman.
Admiral, you're number 3.
My number 3 is Captain Benjamin Sisko. This man is a pirate who's not afraid to fuck his way out of a problem.
My number 3 is Hikaru Sulu. There's just something undeniably sexy about a man with a scar, a knife, a sleazy smile, and an aura of violence. No imperial pomp for Sulu, no shiny breastplate, no throne, no super weapons. He keeps things simple because he got where he is by scrapping. You know what's a sexy number of sex toys to own? 0. I mean, he's got the knife, but that's not really a sex toy. It's an instrument of violence that you can use for sex, much like Sulu himself. Sulu is the epitome of the guy you wouldn't want to meet in a dark alley, but would also love to meet in a dark alley. You have to have a hell of a spark in your eye to earn a place here in this top 5 among admirals and empresses, but Sulu has got it. Sharon, you're number 3.
My number 3 is Hoshi Sato. She is so calculating and thoughtful in how she moves up in rank. She will backstab her way all the way to the top. Yes, Empress, please.
All right, almost to the end of the list. Dan, you're number 2.
So Hoshi Sato is my number 2. Remember what I said about Marlena Moreau being willing to fuck her way through Starfleet? Sato is that on another level. Like, how good is Sato? She's good enough that after an attempt on Archer's life, so blatant that Archer literally pulled the knife out of her hand, Archer still keeps her around as his fuck buddy for an extended period of time. Now, I'm not one for false modesty, but I have no shame in admitting I have never experienced pussy so good it literally excused multiple murder attempts.
I'm going to skip the line, forgive me, Admiral, but my number 2 also is Hoshi Sato. And I've got some numbers to back this up. Same basic take. 20% of the characters on this list served as captain's woman, or an analogous role, gaining privileges and security by serving as a sexual plaything for a powerful commanding officer. Nearly a quarter of the characters on this list ascended to the throne of an empire, either as emperor or regent, but only one character completed the ascent all the way from Captain's Woman to Empress, and that woman is Hoshi Sato. Sato is probably the second most intelligent person on this list behind Spock, and it's close. She spoke 40 languages before she left Earth. She had the first or second most successful ascent to power on this list. She makes a crop top jumpsuit look so good you can almost forget how dumb a garment it is. Once again, apologies, Admiral. I could go on and on about her accomplishments, but the key fact is we see her use all of those many assets directly on sex. Like, I'm sure Worf is a great warrior, but a dick is not a Bat'leth? Irrelevant. Your training does not apply.
You've never seen a Klingon dick before.
Thank you. I was about to say that. You got to use two hands with that thing.
This makes no sense. Yes, but it looks badass. Hoshi, in contrast, applied every ounce of her intellect, her charisma, her physical attractiveness, her ambition directly to the art of making someone come so hard that they get on their hands and knees and form a willing stepping stone in her rise to power. If Hoshi can't twist you around her finger, there's something wrong with you, not her. And there is, in this limited respect, not a goddamn thing wrong with me. Admiral, you're number 2.
My number 2 is Hikaru Sulu. This is a guy that you can really get worked up. He does have the strange flaw of respecting limits. The thing, famously, that happened between him and Prime Universe Uhura is she said no, and he respected that no until she came over and explained that when she said no, she actually didn't mean no. Weird thing for this universe, but I kind of like it. He's got a gruff self-satisfaction while also being a devious little queen. I just love everything about him.
And Sharon, you're number 2.
My number 2 is Philippa Georgiou. I really respect an older woman who can command that much prowess over that many people who are experienced at sex. They learned from her, as you said. I would like to learn a thing or two from her.
Dan, you're number 1.
My number 1, I'm not sure if we're doing this episode, but my number 1 is my one and only Big Feels.
Well, big feels are forbidden, as you know.
Okay, well,
Been
I'll
to the
send myself to
agonizer
the
with you.
agonizer.
Yeah,
no.
You're already going to be executed for this. Just go ahead.
It's okay. I already had time signed up for the agonizer. I'll just tack it on. My number 1 is Catherine Janeway. The one thing that's missing from everyone else on this list, the one thing that keeps these characters from actually legitimately being great, is that all of them are in it for themselves. Like, it's truly difficult for me to imagine any of them giving a shit about another person. Like, even when we do see some affection between these characters, like what Georgiou demonstrates for Michael Burnham, those are usually familial relationships. Like, romantic or sexual relationships seem to be undervalued as far as we can see. And I think that, like, any sex that you could have with these characters would be necessarily limited to purely the pleasure of the physical. The one exception to this, as far as I can tell, is Janeway. Like, aside from her position on the good-evil alignment axis, she's extremely close to just being normal Janeway, which means she's, like, already starting from a pretty strong position. Mm-hmm. But while Prime Janeway is, at times, held back by the rules and regulations of Starfleet, Mirror Janeway clearly is not adhering to those same laws. Like, she and Mirror Chakotay are not just in a relationship with each other, they can barely keep their hands off of each other. She very nearly fucks him in front of their prisoners in the Voyager holding cell. Now, do I think their relationship is the model of stability and health? No, you will hear no claims of hashtag relationship goals from me. But in a universe this devoid of human connection and warmth, even the most unremarkable relationships shine forth like a beacon. So yes, take Janeway's personality, her self-assuredness, her high personal standards, and then just turn up the horniness and turn down the inhibitions. I mean, at the risk of crossing over into another series, make it so.
So, we know who is going to be joining Agony booth tester Dan in the Agony booth. Congratulations to Janeway. Now it's time to find out who's going to be the Admiral's man or woman. Admiral, you're number one.
That's none other than Hoshi Sato.
Mm-hmm.
Big Empress Wu Zietian vibes. Oh, she saw an opportunity and she took it. She knows exactly how to climb from the bottom to the top, which means she's a switch. Everything you could want, she can provide, and she is going to be sitting there plotting and working her little mind the entire time to produce something that you never anticipated. And it's going to be a big, beautiful weapon from a far, far future. Ooh, I love me some Sato.
It's hard to disagree.
Sexually, of course, not romantically.
Oh, of course. My number one is Intendant Kira Nerys. Number one and number two on this list were very, very close for me. The difference maker is simply that Hoshi fucks as a means to an end, whereas Kira is a true hedonist. You can feel the difference with someone who wants it that intensely. They smell different. If you look at Kira's body language, her overall sensuality, the way she pursues sex in a way that doesn't line up with her own well-being or political goals, she's obviously not just a seductress. She is a bona fide killer sex monster. Given free reign, she will not only fuck you, but give you a complete, unhinged, sensual, and psychological experience of over-the-top sexual indulgence. And Hoshi could maybe plan something like that for me, but if I looked deeply enough into her eyes, I'd see that it was instrumental. Like, if I watched the security footage of her leaving my room, you know, from a security camera, those things we have on starships in the mirror universe, she'd be walking like a person. Kira has nothing but deranged fuckability in her eyes, and she walks like an animal in heat at all times, whether anybody's watching or not. With no disrespect to my personal empress, Hoshi Sato, Kira just has to be number one. Sharon, you're number one.
My number one is Catherine Janeway. Her and Chakotay have such chemistry and fire, and to get a man like that to be that excited and to feel that much fire between you, you know she's good at it. Also, she commands respect, and her evil plans and her nihilistic tendencies do not make it so that she still can't make logical, good decisions that save her crew. She is still thinking about others, even while committing glorious, wicked crimes. I think it would be really good times, and it might be a little bit of pain, but the right amount, so there would be so much pleasure.
So, now that we've ranked the whole list, as always, we find ourselves with some disagreements, some questionable takes, some statements that demand clarification. So it's time for a segment we call Turbo Lift Ambush.
Sharon, I have a question for you. So you dinged Kira Nerys because you questioned her governance style. You were like, I don't think she's that good of a governor of the space station. As far as I can tell, her government style begins with, well, I want to be able to have an orgy whenever I want with whomever I choose. So as long as everything else supports that, or at the very least doesn't get in the way with that, that's fine. Now, I can understand if we were ranking them on their ability to run a Department of Education, but from the perspective of this, I feel like she has her priorities in order. So I'm curious as to why you feel like that's a ding against her in this particular case.
Leave my competency kink alone.
That's true. Your list speaks for itself.
I'm just saying, as a one